let's back up. So first of all, Kevin, great segue into the topic of conversation today. Let's back up a little bit and just kind of level set, because I don't know if everyone has come up to speed with yet what this Sinofsky's announcement was. So last week, Sinofsky he wrote an 8,000 word blog post where he detailed the Microsoft Windows 8 strategy for the ARM processor. And, we knew a year ago that Microsoft was going to be making Windows on ARM, but they didn't really announce a lot of details. And I know, Jack, you wrote stuff, and I had stuff in the past few months about, what are they going to do. So this blog post was kind of the blog post that answered all the questions. And the quick overview is, first of all, Windows on ARM. It's Windows on ARM, WOA, or I don't know, like WOA? Whoa. WOA. So Windows on ARM, and it's going to be just like another family of Windows, because you have Windows Mobile, Windows Embedded, Windows, all these things. So it's just another family, WOA or whatever is another family of Windows. But it's only going to be available for people to buy the ARM devices new. So you won't be able to download Windows on ARM. You can't install it. You can't buy like a Linux tablet running ARM and get a copy of Windows to install. It's going to be pre-installed, so it's going to be a lot more like Windows Mobile or iOS in that sense. And as you said, Gabe, correct, it will only run apps from the official Windows Store. So no going online and downloading your own apps and plugging them in or anything like that. But the catch is that the Windows Store does have sort of individuals and companies are able to plug into the Windows Store and have their own sort of private apps in the Windows Store that are not exposed to the public. So that
makes sense.
Yeah, so that's...
But then there was a desktop app limitation too.
Okay, well, here's where it gets crazy. Yeah, so here's where it gets crazy. So Sinofsky mentioned that... oh, sorry, my chat window just disconnected here. Let's see. Stand by.
In Chatango, nobody's saying anything.
All right.
You're not missing anything.
So first of all, there's no virtualization, no emulation, no porting, no nothing. So it's going to be only Metro apps, only apps from the Windows Store, and you're not allowed to port or make any sort of crazy, bring in old apps or virtualization or whatever. But the big question was, remember, Metro is this new UI for Windows, and the question is, when we talked about Metro and Windows 8 in the preview, there was like the Metro UI and there was the traditional desktop UI. So it's almost like Program Manager and Explorer or something. It's now like whatever, Metro, Starty, and the traditional desktop. And so what's interesting is that with Windows 8 on ARM, Sinofsky said that it's all Metro-only apps, except they are going to include a desktop mode. And he said, the desktop mode, it doesn't add any overhead. So, of course, why take it away? People have been using PCs and Windows for years, and they're used to choice and everything. So, because he even said, like, some people said that we're going to make a cut from the desktop mode and just do away with it completely. But if we can have it with no additional overhead, then why not include it? And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Like, I'm down with that. But here's the catch, though. The desktop mode, no one is allowed to put apps into that desktop mode. So not even, the private developers through the Windows Store can create their brand new Metro apps and put those into the Metro side of things. Developers are not even going to be allowed to create ARM-based desktop apps to run in the desktop. So this desktop mode, there's only like 4 apps that are in it. It's going to be Desktop Internet Explorer, the Control Panel, Desktop
File Explorer, right?
File Explorer, Windows Explorer, and Office 15. But what's weird is, no one can add anything, and the Internet Explorer 10 that comes on the desktop mode is going to have no plugins, because you can't add anything.
This sounds like it was back in the day with Windows NT, and we had what was it, MIPS Alpha and PowerPC as well, but it was only a niche solution because there weren't any apps that ran on them. So it was just a few people occasionally that would run them for whatever niche reason they had.
But at least they could write apps if they wanted to. And
yeah,
in this
that's
case,
true.
So it's crazy. And so the reason for this, people say, like, what? So Microsoft says, well, people want to do advanced tasks like advanced file manipulation.
Like, maybe we should be thankful that's in the touch-face interface device that, like, hey, they at least gave us a real file manager, even if it's not designed for the interface.
Yeah, because they do point out that the Windows tablets, even Windows on ARM tablets, are going to allow printers to plug in and mass storage and hard drives because it's still Windows. So you want like a real file manager there.
I just like, yeah, but okay, so we half-assed this, and here's our old solution that doesn't work really well, and you should be happy that you have that.
Well, what's weird is when you
Because that's
ask,
what Jack's like. We should be happy that we have a file manager, even if it's not optimized for the device that we're on. And that's crap, man. Like Microsoft should be, like if they want it to be there, it should be there, but it should be, optimized. It should be ready there for touch and not just running as a Windows desktop off to the side that you can't do anything else with.
well, and so go on, Kevin.
Microsoft knows that developers are what rule the day. It's what, going back even farther from when Windows NT came out, Gabe, the battle they had with OS2 back in the day was won because you could get a free SDK and start writing Windows apps, and to get an OS2 SDK, you had to contact the same rep that sold you your IBM mainframe. What? A $200 SDK or a $2 million mainframe? I'll call you back. He didn't even know the SKU of it, Whereas all you had to do is this shows you how old I am. All you had to do is send a CompuServe to Microsoft and then send you an SDK in the mail. If you can get these developers, if you can get the mind share on them to say, wow, this is where we can go. We can do it half-assed first to get it up and working, but you're not going to have to retrain me. And that's what the CIO doesn't want to have to do in these big, large IT shops. What? I'm looking at all this retraining to do Objective-C so I can get our corporate iPad up and running? Or I can maybe, get up and going with the same C++ that they're using, or XAML, or,
So I guess
VB, and we're up and running. And let's face it. So, one of the other thing that they have to get to is not just the internal guys. They're going to have to get, the ecosystem to play along. And I can imagine you're going to see a Mozilla version out for Metro. Citrix is going to have to come out with a client for it. But the big piece there is everybody knows, no matter how good Citrix can do their clients, you really don't, the mouse and keystroke applications don't translate well to these tablets. So you got to get the developers to change and make them, specific to those devices.
I should say in that blog post, well, actually, we've been referring to tablets. Brian, in your post, in your reaction to this, you were talking about tablets. But in that blog post, they talk about ARM PCs far more often than they talk about tablets. And so I feel like that Microsoft's vision for this is larger than tablets. I think it's just putting that SoC, that system on a chip that makes up the ARM platform, into whatever devices make sense. So I feel like we can compare this stuff and talk about it in the context of tablets, but I feel like we're also not throwing out keyboards and mice at this point.
Well,
because it looks like there's going to be ARM PCs, and they specifically refer to ARM PCs, and then later refer to the fact that they will also have ARM tablets and Windows or x86, x64 tablets. So I think that PCs are still in the mix, even ARM-based ones.
So PC is you mean was a device with a keyboard and mouse?
Yeah, I the same thing that's under your desk right now, but without the typical motherboard, processor, video card, all that stuff. Just an ARM SoC, or a Windows 8 SoC. Running it.
And I guess the Mac. So I use a MacBook Air, or I guess I could say I use an Ultrabook form factor device. And if they
no, that's trademarked.
They just charged me $200 for saying that. So maybe it's if Windows is Windows, it's still Windows 8 on ARM is still real Windows, and it can run real apps in real Office. So if that gives me a device that,
but it can't. But you have to have the apps for it. But so Windows on ARM is still limited. It's not the tablets that are limited to Metro only apps from the Windows Store and desktop apps that you can't.
Yeah.
You can't buy. So the same limitations still apply. It's just that those limitations are much more broad when you're considering that it runs on a PC or a desktop form factor as well.
What came into my head, Gabe, when I saw that was that all those ARM devices are going to have touchscreens. It's still, even the ARM PCs, I didn't anticipate. You just might have a 19-inch touchscreen on that.
Kevin, that's exactly what I was thinking, because otherwise, like you have a a device without a touchscreen and no desktop apps for it, what are you going to do with it?
You can use a mouse with Metro.
I-
Then you just have to
because-
move the mouse farther because the
Every-
buttons are bigger and farther
Look,
apart.
every single person who downloads this Windows Community Preview next week is going to be using a mouse for Metro, right?
Oh, absolutely. I use the developer edition already in Fusion, and it's the same. You still have a keyboard and a mouse with Metro. I mean, it's no different than anything else, really. So I feel like you're right. Like, we go to touch instantly, and that's partly because Microsoft is talking about touch, about how Office is, and unfortunately, I'm using Brian's paraphrase versions because they're much easier to remember. But how Office has been sort of touchified, but it's still basically a desktop app. So